I like to travel on them, watch them, stroke them, smell them, listen to them, anything at all to do with trains I find very, very stimulating.
A loader wears an anorak and is sexually frustrated.
A spotty, bottle-lensed, glass-wearing youth, either an anorak or a duffel coat and a duffel bag.
Misshapen or misformed, you know.
The Burton slacks, the hush puppies, the flask of chicken soup.
When you look at it from an enthusiast point of view, you've got a hobby. It's quite an expensive hobby. You haven't got unlimited money, especially if you're unemployed. You're going to wear clothes which are practical and warm because it's quite cold looking at trains and waiting around for locomotives. You're going to wear things, pieces of clothing that you can get large cameras and things into, notebooks, sandwiches, thermos flasks, and so they look a bit bulky, a bit ugly maybe, they don't look fashionable, so people think that railway enthusiasts always look a scruffy lot.
OK, so some of us wear anoraks, and some of them have hoods with fur on, and some of us drink quite a bit of cocoa. But it doesn't mean we're loco, so hold your tunnel vision. Everybody's looking out for something that may be round the bend. We just tend to do it with a duffel bag, but we're train spotters, we're not trend setters. Is taking down another person's underwear being any more alive than taking down a 125's little details? OK, so we may be wetter, but it's better than drying, the wet that you get from dying, dying, dying with love. It's a passion, not a fashion show. It's smashing, though.
Well, I think that railway enthusiasts probably fall down into three different types. There's the person who takes the professional interest in railways and will probably be just as interested in electric traction on diesels as he would have been in steam. There's a nostalgic chap who grew up with steam and can't see it very much on main lines. And there's what we used to call a number snatcher.
For example, I wanted to look at that locomotive over there. I'd have to look for it through the binoculars. So I look for it through the binoculars to get the number of it. Then I look it up in my book here, which is 33064, etc. I bring a piece of paper to write all the locomotives on, and then I don't put them in my book until I have a break. I'm a bit short-sighted. My eyes are not as good as they used to be. I often have to take somebody with me to be my spy, my eyes. And you do hear a lot. You can hear screeches and clanks and hoots and gurgles from engines. You know where they come from or which direction they're coming from, what type of locomotive they are. Not always, you're not always right, but I mean the experts, the real fanatics are very good on their trains, you know. They can tell miles away what sort of train it is, you know. They can size up the time of day, what time the trains are due, and all sorts of things. It's clever.
There are train spotters who can tell you exactly where a locomotive was last sighted and the reason for it being there and where it is going to go to in the next 24 hours. They are very precise in their outlook. And in fact, they will hunt down a locomotive and see what rake of coaches it's pulling at that time.
Here are some of the things that might be required to go watching trains for a day in the countryside. A scanner. Basically, it's a radio scanner for aeroplanes, but by switching channels you can also listen to locomotive crews, not only on the main line but also in marshalling yards. Binoculars, of course. All railway enthusiasts, as far as I'm aware, have binoculars. But there are occasions when binoculars are simply not powerful enough, so one might need a very, very powerful telescope. Camera, of course, film, guides to scanning, maps. All these things are, in my view, essential for a day out watching trains.
Some of them, I suppose, are a bit sort of cranky in some ways because they're only interested in one type of train, or they're only interested in one type of rolling stock, or, you know, but really they're just people enjoying a hobby. You might say fishermen are a bit strange, or you might say that real ale drinkers could be a bit strange, well, especially after I had about 10 pints of some nice real ale.
There's a lot of different aspects to train spotting. I mean, it's got a... Well, the good thing is you can either be a loner if you want to be a loner, go off and sit on a luggage trolley and watch life go by. It's also it's a social thing as well.
I do think that there's a social element to train spotting, as there is too with being a football fan. But whereas if you've got a group of lads who follow football, they would argue with each other as to which team was the best, etc. Whereas with the train spotting, there was much less argument about which line or which type of locomotive was the best. We had very much had a common interest which bonded us together.
We are individual characters. We don't necessarily club together. We don't necessarily talk to each other. We can do, we cannot. You know, it just all depends what we're interested in. I'm quite a chatty person, but if I'm doing my own thing, I'm doing my own thing. I don't really communicate with other people unless I want to know something, or they come and ask me something.
I myself, when I train spot, I like to travel while I'm doing it. I don't like to... I will stand on platforms while I'm waiting for changes for trains, but I like to travel while I'm doing it, put my Walkman on, sit there with a couple of beers, and if I pass a train, a locomotive or a rake of carriages, I'll get the numbers down.
I'm going away on the railway, and I shall be going straight through. Others will change on the journey. I wonder what they will change into. All of the people are passengers as long as they ride on the train. Once they get off, though, they're somebody else. They are not like the ones that remain on the train. There's something that's ever so special about being out on the rails, going clickety-clack on the back of the track until something mechanical fails. Generally, though, it's fantastic. Even buying a ticket feels good. If you want, you can pay with your plastic, but they won't accept pieces of wood. Stationary folk on the platform, they wave to their friends as they go, but they think that it's weird if you're waving, if you're not somebody they know, though. But once you get out of the station, attitudes rapidly change, and the wave of an absolute stranger is no longer thought to be strange. Everyone's waving at the train. But last night I dreamt that the railway was out of the public domain, and none of the people had any desire to wave at the privatised train.
Railway enthusiasts can be divided up into so many different categories. There are those who like steam locomotives, there are those who like diesels, there are those who like electric, and so on. And there are those who like foreign, and there are people who like everything. It's so difficult to explain what it is that's so exciting.
I'm interested in all forms of transport. You know, I like ships, I have ship magazines, I like trains, I have train magazines, I have buses, I've got a couple of old buses of my own. I can't afford a train. I probably would like a locomotive, it would probably be very nice, but it's a very expensive piece of gear, you know.
I've never been especially interested in the engine or such like, more in the traffic handled, how services are planned, the history to some extent, and photography. You see, I've got one of my cameras here even now.
I think that taking pictures with trains is probably not understood at all. Certainly when I was on my degree course, I studied Russian. If you'd pointed a camera at a locomotive at a station building, let alone a moving train or locomotive, you'd have very promptly been arrested.
I would probably think about 1970. I started collecting the timetables. An old timetable is really a source of history. If it's an original timetable, I look upon it as what I would call a primary source of history, whereby you are recreating or in your mind you're recreating the traffic that came into a place like a seaside resort like Southport, for example.
I understand why people like timetables. I'm not particularly keen on them at all. because that takes the excitement away. If I go along the track side, I don't really want to know what's coming. Timetables are far too positive for me. They say that a train is coming along, and generally speaking, it comes along when it says.
My father first interested me in railways. He was what I would call a passive train watcher. He liked watching them. And when I was about 5 years old, he took me up to the top of my grandmother's street, where there was a metal bridge going over a railway cutting. And he introduced me to the steam trains there coming out of Bank Hall, Liverpool Exchange. And we used to stand there for about 25 minutes or so. And then as I got older, I went myself up to this bridge, and there were train spotters spotting trains, and I used to say to them, "What are you doing this for?" And they would tell me and show me the books, and then that's where I started my apprenticeship. And that, I was hooked. I was like a salmon with a fly. I was hooked, and that was me from then on in.
Part of the original attraction of train spotting was it was a bit dirty, a bit noisy, a bit grubby. Kids could go and hang around in this kind of Just William kind of environment, have a laugh. You know, it wasn't just train spotting. I mean, part of the fun of going train spotting was the fact that, you know, you didn't spend all your time sitting there very well behaved with a notebook. I mean, we got up to all sorts of, you know, naughty things. I mean, it's very much a kind of, you know, Bash Street Kids sort of thing. You know, the railway staff were the teachers, and the train spotters were the, you know, the unruly kids.
Well, it was Dad that started it off. He had a house that had a railway behind it, and from then on he took a railway shop, and that's what started me off on trains.
My father was not a railway enthusiast, but he was a railwayman and a bit of a workaholic, and we were always around railway places, and that's where I got my interest. You know, you're taken somewhere because your father's going to do some work, you're sitting in the car, so you get out of the car and you go and look at the locomotives, you look at the wagons, you watch the train shunting, and then suddenly, you don't know why, but you're spellbound. The bulk of my business is a railway enthusiast and his wife. Some of the wives are railway enthusiasts themselves, the majority are not. But it's better to bring your wife here than on the platform end at number 5 at Crewe. You can wine her and dine her and keep her moderately warm and comfortable. Often wives will get together and sit and have a few beers or whatever it is they like dinner times around by the fire.
Well, women and railways, it's a very, very sore point, I suppose. And one of the big things about the train spotter is that, you know, he's meant to be a very sad guy who's got absolutely no sex life, never had any experience with women. And if he is married, he's probably married to someone pretty horrible with a grey cardigan.
I've never met any female rail enthusiasts, train spotters, whatever, in over 35 years of following the hobby.
I used to go down to the local station, sit on the platform, collect numbers, train spotting.
Were you the only woman then?
Yeah, oh, loads of lads. Yeah. But as far as I can remember, I was the only girl. I sat on the railway station and watched the Flying Scotsman come through. Sat there for hours waiting for them.
And a number of girls that I know are genuinely railway enthusiasts in their own right. Became railway enthusiasts because they went with their dad. Because their dad went to the station, mum went to the shops, they decided to go with dad and did what dad did. And I've got one young lady who comes here regularly, and she knows as much as I do.
I do think you get a lot of women interested in the historical side of it. If you go over to a steam railway like the Severn Valley at the weekend, I mean, you know, you get a lot of women down there, sort of, and they quite like that historic part of it. They're obviously not into collecting numbers, but, you know, I mean, women, I think if you said to a woman, I am a train spotter, she might run. But if you said, I like travelling on the Orient Express, she'd probably say, you know, take me.
I mean, my wife comes with us when we go off in the car.
Yeah, but only because you make her. I have to disagree there. I think it is a male-dominated thing.
No, without her navigation...
How many do you know? Yeah, but she's not a train spotter.
Alan
she's only
Wilmington's
a navigator.
wife.
That's one person.
Oh, well,
That's
yeah.
not a general trend.
I know, but there must be others. I mean, it can't be just the odd...
You don't see very many women, let's put it that way.
My wife is a long-suffering... My wife is lovely because she encourages my hobby. She has to put up with me building my trains in the living room. She has to put up with railway timetables strewn all over the floor. And even when we travel, if we do travel by train, she now sits down and says, did you get that class 37 or did you get that class 86? You know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So she encourages me. So I don't think girls are totally devoid of the hobby, but there can be a distraction.
I think train spotting was very much a British invention anyway. I think it was Ian Allen in the 40s who brought out the first train spotting books, and I don't know exactly why, but it became a big craze which actually swept the country at one point. I mean, which actually worried the railway authorities quite a lot. And there were quite a lot of incidences of trespass and children being taken to court wholesale for running about on the railways.
This was one of the first Southern Railway books, and you will see here that the numbers were set out with a class against them.
Well, Ian Allen obviously started it, but he obviously saw there were people interested in the train, so I mean he was the first one to actually compile a book and start it all off, really. I mean, that probably made it more accessible to other people as well, you know, made it more of a hobby by being able to collect the numbers via putting them in a book.
This was the first LMS book. They dealt with their locomotives in a different manner, and so these were set out just in numbers with information about them at the head of the class there.
The ABCs, as they were called when they first came out, were more or less de rigueur for anybody in the 50s and 60s. Nobody would go train spotting without one.
I've always been a railway nut ever since I can remember. In fact, Saturdays and Sundays were always spent cycling to some main line to watch the trains go by. But I don't think I ever actually took engine numbers. That was a thing that happened, that people started using the books and underlining the locomotives as they'd seen them. I joined the Southern Railway Company in the Public Relations Department, and we had a lot of inquiries from people who wanted to know something about the Southern Railway engines, their names and numbers and details. And we had nothing, so we used to send out a duplicated list. And if there were any follow-up questions, nobody in the office was the slightest bit interested in the company's locomotives. So they used to come to me, and eventually I said, well, why don't we do a book? I got an estimate for printing 2,000 copies for £42. And I sold the 2,000 copies at a shilling each before they were even published. And since then, of course, that 2,000 copies, by the 1950s and 60s, we were selling anything up to 1 million copies a year.
He tapped a market which was largely untapped, and I think for many years he had the market, certainly for the lists of engine numbers, coaches, etc., more or less to himself, and he'd done us all a great power of good, in that prior to this it would have been very hard, if not impossible, for someone, unless they worked within the railway industry, to collate and find all this sort of information.
Train spotting carries a heavy cargo of nostalgia, really. I think if you're my age, you can't help if you're sitting on the platform, you can't help thinking of today, last week, 20 years ago. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, part of the joy of train spotting is the memories that you take with you, especially about the old days,
I'm more interested in the past. I don't think there's a great deal of future for the railways. I'm sad to have to say this, but I think privatisation has more or less ruled out expansion of the railways in this country.
In the days of steam, there was what we call the romance of steam. Steam engines were sort of living beasts. There was a great rhythm, great pulsating power that everybody could sense in a steam locomotive. Today, the more mundane multiple units, or even the 125s, which pretend they're multiple units, these have much less of that major appeal.
The first train I rode in when I was 8. It was a beautiful beast, a great one-nostriled black dragon, cheerfully dragging its human wagon loads. Now the nostrils have gone, but the benevolence goes on. The loco lives, the loco gives. Even the trains I do not catch transport me.
Many of Britain's railway enthusiasts are nostalgic. They do look back to either the good old steam days, although I'm afraid they are dying out now, or middle-aged people are looking back to the early days of diesel locomotives. But there's a new breed, they are looking forwards, and they are looking to higher speed trains, new types of trains. There's a great mixture of people.
Certainly there are people who like the old things, but I rather like the idea of people going for the new things, because railways are going to serve the public much more in the future as fossil fuels diminish and people get fed up with motor cars and lorries. There's no doubt the railways are coming back.
What is it that fascinates people about railways? I think the power of the motive power of the traction, the great power of a train starting up and moving, the grace of a train at high speed. These fascinate people and create an interest which can last a lifetime.
I think it's the positive way railway vehicles run along two pieces of metal with a flange that guides them on a very, very simple guidance system.
The speed and power is something which fascinates me, especially on the East Coast Main Line where the trains are now reaching speeds of 150 miles per hour. That is phenomenal.
I go back to the basics, that it is a steel wheel on a steel rail, and it's guided. It doesn't go of its own free will and accord. It has to be programmed wherever it goes. And everything about it is of interest, and it is controlled by human beings.
To go to Willesden Railway, the big site in Willesden, North London, and see two trains being dispatched a day to Avignon in the south of France is a wonderfully exciting prospect, certainly for me, and I think for many other people. And it's the idea of the railways joining up, plugging in to the railways of Europe.
I think train spotting is, you know, we're in a period of decline. I don't think it'll ever disappear altogether, but I mean, the heyday was in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Steam went in the 60s. Diesels, you know, are virtually all gone by the end of the 80s. And I think we're, you know, I think we're almost coming to the end. I mean, obviously there's a lot of railway enthusiasts who are going to take me up on that one and say, you know, we'll do it till the day we drop.
It's very sad, really, because British Rail, a lot of the depots you could go around, you could get passes, you could talk to the men, you could find out what trains are going where, but now they're very guarded, which is sad, really. It's, it gives you a very funny feeling down the spine that you're spying on other people's property or you're doing a bit of skullduggery. You know, it's making the enthusiast more of a sort of spy, really, than the enthusiast. You know, it's funny, really. I like a bit of skullduggery myself. There's something that I can't find out. I make sure I do find it out somehow or other. You know.
Only the British have had this thing about train spotting, for actually sort of number crunching. I don't know why, you know, I don't know why it's never kind of got to that stage with the other countries, why there are no French train spotters or German train spotters.
Whether or not we gave railway enthusiasm to the world or not, I'm really not, you know, I'm not sure. I suppose because so many people think the British are loony. And there are quite attractive things about loony people, I think. Maybe we did. Maybe people thought, well, why not?
I've been asking myself for years what it is that, what is this madness that afflicts me, and why what makes me tick inside about railway enthusiasm. And there's things of nostalgia, and I think there's an aspect of nostalgia that's explainable and worth opening out. But even when you've examined it all, and your technical interest and the fact that there's something about a steam engine that's almost alive, it still remains as an indescribable bug. There's a germ of something inside you that you can't really explain why. Why every time I hear the sound of a train does my head turn in the direction of the sound?
I think if you ask anybody why they're interested in railways, they'll say, "I'm the faintest idea. It's something that's just happened." You either have it or you don't have it. And I think if you've got it badly, you never lose it.
I think one of the reasons that nostalgia eats away, and it's almost that you need to keep replenishing, it's like a drug, and every day you need to give it a fix, is that time of our childhood when we were really into trains in the 40s, 50s, 60s, the summer holidays came to an end too soon. We never actually managed to satisfy and complete what we were doing. Some adult always said it was time to go home before we felt it was time to go home. And you're trying to capture that unfinished business. There was always another train to come, and you had to leave before it got there.